Hello, my name is Boon Zavik, and welcome to another episode of the Amino Labs podcast. Today we're going to be talking about 5 health myths, and we're going to start debunking them. But before we get into the first myth, I would like for you to take a moment, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, because I want to make sure that you get all the notifications about future episodes that come out. And then, of course, you can comment below, throw us a thumbs up. It really helps us in the algorithm. But let's get into the first myth that we have here. So the first myth that I always see floating around is that celery juice detoxes your body. Now, maybe it's celery juice, maybe it's spinach juice, maybe it's kale juice, but I always see these things about how certain juice or liquid is going to detoxify your body. And the reality is, most of these things are really not going to detoxify your body. Your body already has amazing organs that detoxify it. Your liver, your kidneys, these are all things that you already have that will help you detoxify. So when we're talking about, juices or something like a celery juice detox, a lot of times it's just the hydration that you're getting from that. So especially for someone that maybe isn't drinking enough water or having enough fluids in their diet or having enough, vegetables, then yeah, the second they have some kind of juice like this, especially a vegetable juice, they could feel remarkable because now they're finally getting good hydration, great nutrients. If they're having maybe less of a juice and more of a smoothie, then they're getting good fiber. So that may just have them be feeling better. So it's not that this is completely a myth. I would say the myth aspect around this is that you don't have to have something like a celery juice in order for your body to detoxify. Your body is working all the time to detoxify and deal with all the different toxins that we're exposed to regularly. That's how we've been able to stay alive and survive. So instead, what you should really do, as a takeaway from this myth, is to realize that you need to keep putting in more nutrients into your body. Keep eating whole foods. Keep avoiding your inflammatory foods. Keep avoiding a lot of the toxins out there, right? Like, don't be drinking alcohol. Don't be smoking cigarettes, right? All these things that we know definitively are quite toxic. Reduce those as much as you possibly can, and instead keep pouring in as many good things, as many positive nutrients, and that will allow your body to function well and detoxify on its own. Let's go to the second myth. Second myth that we have here is that, it's actually similar to the toxins, so I'm glad this is the second one, and it's that sweating removes toxins from your body. So this isn't exactly true. So sweat is composed mostly of water, salt, and some other trace minerals. So it's not really toxins that are flushing, out of your body. But the detoxification, once again, this primarily is occurring in your liver, kidneys, and your intestines. So same with the celery juice. You don't have to put yourself into a sauna or put yourself into a sweating status in order for your body to detoxify. Your body's going to be detoxifying with these organs. Now, this isn't to say that sauna and sweating is, not good or doesn't have other health benefits and merits. It absolutely does. It's just, I don't want your takeaway to be that, in order for me to, get the toxins out from last night, I need to, go and do a big heavy sweat. That also, starts to lead into this idea that you can ride this roller coaster of, good behavior, bad behavior, good behavior, bad behavior. And, that's really not the cycle that you want to be on. Just continue to focus on doing the things that you know are going to be good for your body and reduce the things that you know are going to be bad. But as far as, this goes as a myth, yeah, you don't have to be sweating to release toxins. That's going to be happening already with your various organs, but please continue to go to the sauna. There are many other health benefits that come from that. So let's see, what's the next myth that we have here? This is a really good one. And I'll speak from experience. When I was, younger and, high school and college, I absolutely thought that this was true. And it isn't, not at all. And the thought is that you can catch up with sleep on the weekend. That's the myth. The reality is you can't bank up a bunch of sleep and then, spend it throughout the week or weekend and, doing, certain activities. So instead, what's better to be done is have a proper circadian rhythm of when you go to bed, when you sleep, when you wake up, you kind of just keep that rhythm going, keeping it as consistently as you can. I know in one of our previous videos or maybe one of our shorts, we talked about, various sleep trackers and how you can start, better measuring that. That will give you a great idea of, when do you commonly go to bed? When do you commonly wake up? And then are you sticking within that schedule? The consistency of your sleep behavior, and it's now referred to as, sleep hygiene, is really what's going to allow you to feel great and well rested. Sleep is so unbelievably important. And I feel that with so much of this, hustle mentality and hustle mindset and I'll sleep when I'm dead. Listen, if you're not getting enough sleep, death is going to come a lot sooner towards you. So you don't want to be sitting here going, oh, I'll just get a ton of sleep on the weekend and it's, fine for me to do all these other things. Or the reverse of, I'll go crazy on the weekend and I'll get enough sleep, during the week. It's better to have consistency in your schedule of when you go to bed and of when you wake up. It's much better for your health. So let's move on to the next myth. This one, there's kind of shades of truth, and I'll get to that in a moment. So this myth is that dairy causes inflammation for everyone. So I know from our laboratory, looking at the large, data of the people that we test, that dairy is one of the, higher, more inflammatory foods. The challenge here is you can't just make a blanket statement for everyone saying, because dairy is such a highly inflammatory food for so many people that we've tested, everyone should avoid it. Also, you need to look at the different forms of dairy and the benefits that they could have that could either outweigh maybe some of the detriment, or potentially these benefits could make the inflammatory side go away. So, for example, there's been a lot of large-scale studies that actually show that dairy, especially in the fermented forms, like yogurt and kefir, can have anti-inflammatory effects in many people. So that's where it can't just be like, oh, if this is dairy, it's terrible for you. Also, I recently saw a video from some health influencer, I forgot the gentleman's name, and he was saying like, hey, a great, protein bar is, eating like a block of like Parmesan cheese. And initially I thought that was kind of crazy, but when he broke down the details of it, I was like, what, that isn't that crazy. It sounds kind of like beef jerky. There's a high amount of protein, there's a good amount of sodium. So you have to think through and balance that. But the point to take away here is, just because you see some trends saying that dairy is causing inflammation for everyone, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to avoid it. I would say, in a lot of these realms of where like a certain food is pointed as a bad guy, just look at that food or rather that group, so this one dairy, and find out what are the best forms of it, right? So we're saying before the, like a Greek yogurt or kefir or, some other, higher quality forms of dairy are probably still going to be okay for you. But if you're reaching for, some, I don't know, Yoplait, full of sugar and, preservatives and like, oh, this one's going to be fine, then there's going to be other issues with that. And it could be that those are the things that are, giving more inflammation to you than just simply the dairy. So let's move on now to the final myth. This myth is one that I also believed for a long time. And until I started seeing more evidence around, essentially disproving this. And the last myth is that caffeine dehydrates you. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. A lot of the times people don't just say caffeine because, that's just the powder, but coffee. Coffee dehydrates you. So a lot of people think that if you have coffee or tea in the morning that you're just really dehydrating yourself. And there's, been some videos about, how you need to drink extra water before you have your coffee. The reality is coffee and tea, coffee is essentially bean water, right? And tea is, this like leaf water. So you aren't removing the water out of it. And although there are some diuretic effects of, having something with caffeine, it does not mean that if you drink 8 ounces of coffee that your body's going to deplete more than that when you urinate out. So instead, make sure that you are drinking enough water. You don't want your sole form of liquid to be coffee, because then there's a concern about how much caffeine you're having, and same for caffeinated teas. But instead, have a variety of liquids, especially focusing more on just having nice pure water. And then you can have some caffeine in the morning. We had another video talking about like the good timing of when to have caffeine. It's basically 60 minutes to 90 minutes after you wake up. But if you're finding yourself, feeling fatigued and whatnot in the morning, and maybe you're only leaning on caffeine, or you're finding that later in the day you're having a headache, it could be because you are dehydrated. And maybe it's because you thought, oh, I'll have 8 ounces of, I'll have like a mug of coffee and I'll continue on with my day. But really, this could be triggering that dehydration because you just simply aren't drinking enough fluid. So it's not that coffee is the bad guy and that it's, some massive diuretic that's going, to dehydrate you. Instead, make sure that you're doing a good job of staying hydrated. So I'm not completely opposed to the part of this myth that's saying that, hey, make sure to drink some water in the morning, because I still think that's a great habit. As soon as you wake up, have some water, especially some water with like maybe a little bit of salt in it, a little bit of electrolytes to replenish yourself from, the sweating that you're doing through the night. And then, yeah, wait a, hour to hour and a half, have your coffee, continue on with your day. What is it that we've learned through these different myths? I think that we've learned that just because something's popular, it doesn't mean that's proven, right? Also, myths do contain a grain of truth, so that's where it gets confusing. So you're like, well, this sounds right. Like I remember I had coffee, I had to go to the bathroom, maybe I had coffee, I had to go, poop. So you kind of start thinking like, yeah, this sounds like there's something there between coffee and how it's affecting me. So all these myths have enough truth that it really feels like it's, true. And I don't think that any of the people that are promoting these are trying to do so in a bad way. I just think there's just some misinformation or misunderstanding, or potentially they were looking at some outdated study that has now proven otherwise, such as, the coffee and the diuretic and how it doesn't really, make you lose much water. Real health is personalized, right? It's not copy and pasted. So you need to find out what works for you, and that's why it's good to, try things out. So if you're someone that was having celery juice and you thought that was great and it was detoxifying your body, maybe it's not the worst that you're having, these various vegetable juices, but don't sit there having some terrible habit where you're, pulling on a bunch of toxins thinking, oh, I can just do this thing later to detoxify it. You want to live a life where you're doing the best that you possibly can in as many situations as you can, right? So let that be the focus. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. My name is Boon, and before you leave, please make sure that you like and subscribe, throw a comment, let us know what you think about the video, good, bad, or otherwise. I just want to hear some feedback from you. If you have any ideas of future topics that you want us to discuss, make sure to leave that in the comments. Thank you so much.